Are we good, Stephanie?
I think we're ready.
Excellent. Good morning. This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission Advisory Review Panel convened to review applications submitted for the Regional Initiative Grants for fiscal year 2021. I'm Ann Valentine, Commissioner from Carmel. Today is April 29th, and we are meeting by conference call and streaming live from a webinar. We welcome applicants and other guests who may be listening in today. We'd like to remind you that you are muted for this review. There is no direct contact or conversation about the evaluation and disposition of applications before, during, or after the panel meeting. At this time, we would like the panelists and staff to introduce themselves, stating their name, occupation, and where they are from in the state. I'll call out your name and then you can introduce yourself. We'll start with Christine Johnson.
Hi, my name's Christine Johnson. I'm a benefits analyst for Full Beauty Brands, and I've lived here in Indianapolis since 1997, but I'm originally from Englewood, Ohio, just across the border. Glad to be here today.
Thank you, Christine. Next, Joy Rogers.
Morning, I'm Joy Rogers. I am Development and Marketing Specialist at the Indiana University School of Nursing, and I'm located in Indianapolis.
Wonderful, thank you, Joy. Next, Asia McCaney.
Hello, everyone. My name is Asia McCaney. I am a National Urban Fellow through Georgetown University, and I'm also working with the Madam Walker Legacy Center here in Indianapolis. I'm originally from Flint, Michigan, so I'm a hop, skip away from my roots.
Great, thank you, Asia. Next, Kavita Mahoney.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kavita Mahoney. I'm the Art Center Manager for the Garfield Park Art Center, which is part of Indy Parks here in Indianapolis.
Thank you, Kavita. Next, Arlandra Jara.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alona Hara. I'm originally from Lafayette, but I moved to Indianapolis in 2014, and I'm currently a paralegal with Indiana Legal Services.
Thank you. Next, IAC staff, Stephanie Haynes.
Hi, Stephanie Haynes, Indiana Arts Commission, Arts Education and Accessibility Manager and Region 7 Grants Manager.
And our other IAC staff.
Deanna Pulsma, the Grants and IT Manager at IAC.
Thank you.
And Chapin Schnick, I assist with contracts, operations, and technology.
Great, I think that covers all of us. Now we'll begin the panel review. This is how the process will work. I will announce the application we will review and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based upon the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that the application does not need to be recapped since everyone has read it. Just provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I will ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or opposing comments. We're not looking for consensus, just a full evaluation from the different perspectives panelists bring to the table. After the second reader is finished, I will open the discussion to the full panel to offer their perspectives. Remember, in the interest of time, we are only looking for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, we will place the panelist's video and audio on hold during the application's evaluation. However, this morning, there are no conflicts on this panel. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we will ask the panel to update their scores in the online system. It is common for scores to change as a result of this broader discussion. Are there any questions from our panelists? Great, let's begin. We will now review the application. Number 1, Hendricks Symphonic Society, Arts Organization Support Level 1, with the first reader, Christine. Christine, you might be on mute.
Thank you, Ann.
Yep.
Okay, so I noted that the history of this organization is strong, and through their programming, it's clear that the organization provides authentic, high quality, and a big range of impactful classical music experiences to Hendricks County. It was applauded that the board meets every month. There's a good variety of talent on the board, and they have 100% board giving. While they did explain a loss of income, I was curious as to why the budget was set so much higher than in the past 3 years. and I didn't feel that the explanation necessarily addressed the much higher expectation of income. I appreciated that the organization has kept ticket prices flat for the past 3 years and offers student and senior discounts, which can address the barrier of low income community members, trying to attend the performances. In addition, they offer the free concert with Avon Schools, which also shows a commitment to providing low income opportunities. I would have liked to see a little bit more diverse communication materials. They mentioned in the application that the demographics of the Avon schools as 40% being from a minority ethnic group. So it might be good to see the makeup of that ethnic group, to see if Spanish materials would be helpful for attracting more diverse audience members. And I wanted to also be able to see more specific practices and procedures to track demographics of those served and measure success. It was good to see that they did conduct a survey of audience members in December, but one time is really not enough to know if your programming for the whole year is impactful. So maybe surveys after every concert or collect would be good. And even if you're tracking something simply in an Excel sheet, that's better than not tracking at all. Also, you could send out requests for feedback from Facebook or social media as well and get more feedback in that area. It looked like the music director was very experienced. I really appreciated the concert notes in the materials that were provided. And I believe it is very, very high quality experiences to audience members. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I'll now invite the second reader, Kavita, to add new or opposing comments.
Let's see here, looking at my notes. I appreciated that they did address the lack of diversity on their board, and that it's an ongoing discussion, and that they want to recruit more diverse board members. I suggested that it might be helpful to even develop a committee within their board that whose purpose is to look for opportunities to diversify their board. I know there's a lot of arts organizations that are kind of moving towards that direction. I thought it was great that they are collaborating with local schools and getting youth involved in leadership positions within their board and organization. Thought that was a strong point. I think I was interested in learning more about the roles that their volunteers took on and how they manage their volunteers and recruit their volunteers, since this is primarily a volunteer-run organization. I think those are my only additions.
Great, thank you. Now we will open the discussion to the panel for any additional or new comments. Okay, seeing that the discussion is finished, I'll ask all panelists to please finalize your scores, update your online comments. Okay, we'll now move to the next application. We'll review application number 2, Iibada Dance Company, Arts Organization Support Level 1. We'll start with our first reviewer, Joy.
All right. In the area of organizational excellence, I thought that it was great that the group seems to be dedicated to investing money by hiring quality instructors, paying them a competitive rate. Just as an example, to build up their program and take it to a higher level. I noted that the board demographics are reflective of the young participants. A concern that I had in that area was that there's only 4 full board meetings per year, so I was curious as to whether there are smaller meetings in between. Community engagement, I thought that it was great that the company meets with parents and family on a regular basis to get their feedback. I also think it's a good idea to expand outside of the Fall Creek Mapleton area. I think that'll attract more people. I was thinking that maybe the group could consider accessibility plans for students who'd like to participate but have a handicap or disability. I didn't see anything there. I was impressed with their arts education programs. I noticed that it's not just about technical skills, but also discipline and work ethic. So I thought that was really great. I would be curious to learn more about the background and experience of those who are developing the programs. I didn't notice that in the application. And I'd also like to see more coverage of how the group plans to accessibility. So if someone has a handicap and they want to participate, how would they go about doing that? And those are my comments.
Thank you, Joy. I'll invite our second reader, Christine, to add new or opposing comments.
Thank you. Joy, I definitely agreed with a lot of your comments. I would like to add a couple of other ones. I did think that board diversity needs to be discussed. I think a lot of our panel today, we discussed board diversity. And while I understand that the board diversity here reflects the service, I do think that it should still be considered to be expanded because of the organization's mission statement, which is, no matter the race or religious background or lifestyle. So the board should be reflective of the community, which is diverse in age, race, and gender. It would have also been great to see the board tenure and also the strengths of the board members. So whether they have a strength in marketing, law, whatnot, that would have been helpful for me to be able to see. Let's see, let me scroll down here. I did think that the website gave the impression that the organization focuses only on the American African population. And again, with the vision, it seems that they're trying to reach a diverse and inclusive audience. So maybe just including more photos that were included in the materials, the marketing materials, I thought would have been good for the website, just to, reinforce the vision that it is trying to reach a diverse audience and not just specifically to African Americans. I agree with Joy when she talked about accessibility. We didn't see much about accessibility for disabled children or accessibility to performance areas and something of that nature. So I definitely think accessibility could have had a stronger mention in the organization. And then again, I agreed with Joy. More information on the credentials of the instructors would be great as well. I think that wraps up my comments.
Thank you. Now we will open the discussion to the panel for any additional or new comments.
Hi, everyone. This is Asia. I definitely concur with the comments that both Joy and Christine made. There's just one extra comment. They both hit on the board and board diversity, but there's something that concerned me was just the financial participation of the board. Said there was only about 15%. And so I would like to see what kind of plans that they are putting in place to make sure that the board is financially participating and contributing to the organization. I think that would strengthen this application a little bit more, especially given that the board is small in number. Developing strategies on how they can increase board participation and financial support would definitely strengthen this organization.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, it's Kavitha. I agree with all the comments that have been made. I also noted that there was a little bit of a discrepancy between the ages that they listed that they serve. In their art education section, it says that they serve youth ages 3 to 21, but under their organization description, it's at 3 to 18. But they also discuss professional growth and professional development opportunities for their instructors. So they're also, in a way, serving an older audience as well. And I think there's room to sort of hash that out and showcase that they do serve more than the smaller age range that they are stating that they serve.
I wanted to add one more thing. Another thing I wanted to say was it would have been really interesting to know if any of their students that went through their programs have become professional dancers or continued somehow in the industry. That would have been like a good long-term item to know in the application as well.
Thank you. Seeing that the discussion is finished, I'll ask all panelists to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Thank you. We will now move to application number 3, Indiana Wind Symphony, Arts Organization Support Level 1, starting with our first reader, Asia.
This application, I believe, started off kind of strong as far as organizational excellence is concerned. I definitely appreciated how the applicant identified their current programming and the growth over last year, just showing us that their concerts and their programming has been growing and creating sustainability. However, I do believe this particular part could be strengthened by providing more detail in various areas. There's just some things that as a reader, I wasn't sure what the naturalization program in Carmel is. So providing detail in those areas that they're serving kind of gives us a much more, a greater ability to assess, how the organization is performing. As far as community engagement and idea, I thought that this particular applicant, there's some good things that they were doing. It's clear that their targeted audience or community, I'm sorry, it's not clear. Their targeted audience and community is a little ambiguous. They did express in their student-based programming that they're doing student-based programming, but beyond that, some of their inclusion, diversity, and equity strategies was not very clear to me. So it was difficult to identify how they were moving forward in those measures. I think providing more detail as to how the organization is going to strategize would strengthen this application a little bit more. I believe that, for example, they state that they include diverse players within their organization. I would have liked to see a little more information on how they recruited them, what were the aspects of diversity that they were looking at. It would strengthen this application to know, like I said, how they went about recruiting those players. Did they seek them out? Did they partner with organizations? Is there certain verbiage that they are including in their marketing that is going to increase their brand width? These were just some things that I felt like could really strengthen this organization's ability, especially their outreach in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm definitely confident that their arts education program is probably a good one, but this particular aspect of their application was not complete. And so the information that they did provide was good. I think that the side-by-side program that they spoke to had a lot of potential, even for growth and even arts education outcomes. However, it seems that they were not able to complete it fully. So I wasn't able to get a full understanding of what their arts education program looked like. And I think that those are some key areas that really could be strengthened in detail, and also maybe timing that could allow me to see the product of what they're able to present as far as arts education.
Thank you, Asia. Next, our second reader, Arlandra.
Hi, so I agreed with a lot that Asia had to say. I did agree that it was strong to begin with, and then I felt it kind of was lacking in details necessary to, more accurately be able to evaluate this application. So especially for the sections on community engagement idea and arts education, I would have liked more detail. What kinds of surveys are being developed? How are you trying to make yourself as an organization aware of barriers to access if you're always within the same pool of individuals that you're trying to survey. And then with the arts education, again, I would have just like more answers on where are these high school students coming from, what are the outcomes for attendees in each target population that you described. So yes, just generally more information and details would have definitely strengthened this application.
Thank you. Now we will open the discussion to the panel for any additional or new comments.
Hi, Anne. I had a couple of comments I would like to add. I definitely agree with Asia and Alondra's comments. I wanted to make some comments on the financials. I did want to say that it was difficult to read and some of the pages were cut off on the left-hand side. So make sure when you're, submitting your documents that they're complete and we can see everything. Another item was the organization stated it's 100% volunteer, but there are payroll expenses listed in the budget. So I didn't really understand why that would be exactly. And again, it's just more clarity and more information in the application. They also had put a lot of staff positions into the budget. And I don't know that all those are necessary for an organization of this size. I do agree with the honorariums for the conductors and the scholarships. I think that those speak to the quality of the organization and to the outreach for the students. So those made sense to me as well. As far as engagement, besides planning to survey and how they plan to do that is not stated in the application. I didn't see any way that they're getting two-way feedback from the community currently. The application does mention that the community provides input on the repertoire for the concerts in those communities like Greencastle, but it doesn't mention how that process takes place. So are they talking to somebody before? Who are they talking to? How are they making decisions about repertoire for those particular concerts? That would be good to know. It does state that the venues are vetted for accessibility and mobility issues, so I definitely appreciated that. Let's see. I think besides gaining exposure through the events, what other benefits do the participants in the organization and audience members gain? They talked about exposure a lot, but didn't really say what other benefits either the musicians or the participants would gain. So I think knowing some more about what kind of impact they will be having would be good. It's very clear that it's a very high quality organization. More information just in general, I feel completely in agreement with the other two panelists. I think it started off as a really strong application and just kind of lost traction at the end. The other thing is also to make sure that when you're writing your application, your sentences are complete. There was a couple times where sentences just trailed off and weren't completed. So make sure that you're, maybe you come back to a section, make sure you go back to that section and complete your sentences so it's not just like ... That's all my comments. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, seeing that our discussion is finished, I'll ask the panelists to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Okay, we'll now review application number 4, Indianapolis Women's Chorus, Arts Organization Support Level 1, starting with first reader Kavita.
So I thought this organization's mission, purpose, and vision and their programming was pretty clear. And I appreciated that they do a lot of outreach and collaborate and partner with other organizations. I think I would like to learn a little bit more about their partnerships and how it links back to their organization's mission. I was also curious about the paid staff and their time commitment and goals. It did list that there were part-time and quarter-time staff in the narrative, and the breakdown below says 25 hours per week. And I wasn't sure if that was split between all 3 staff members or per staff member. And then just sort of how, with their staff being part-time, how do they rely on board and volunteer help? Do they, hold their board members and volunteers accountable? So I just, learning more about that structure, I think would be helpful. I really appreciate their commitment to the discussions around the idea topics and how to diversify their board. It did state that 78% of the board is making annual contributions. I wasn't sure if the contributions were required or, what it might take for them to reach 100%. I was looking at the budget. I was looking at the drop of external expenses from over 2,000 to 100. I may have missed that for fiscal year 20. If it was for their 25th anniversary celebration, that was what I was guessing. I'm not sure if that was addressed or not. In terms of the idea topics, I think they were definitely very strong in reaching diverse audiences and being inclusive and accessible. Let me see here. I noted that, because they do really try to reach multicultural communities, it might be helpful to have some of their printed materials translated, perhaps in Spanish, when trying to reach out to the different audiences. I wanted to also learn more about how they're seeking to do more to support their other 2 communities they listed, which was the women's needs organizations and the women who face life challenges. I mean, I thought that was a really interesting point, and I think I would have liked to read a little bit more about that. In terms of art education, they definitely do a lot of outreach to schools and student and families from underserved populations, which I thought was great. And I just suggested that it might be good to see if they could partner with other schools or organizations that serve youth, like Boys and Girls Club or Girls Inc., to implement that similar type of art education programming.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to our second reader, Joy Rogers.
All right, I have to echo most of what Kavita said. I pretty much don't have much to add. I think in terms of community engagement and the idea, I think it was good to offer to provide childcare. I think that's a dimension that's not often considered, and that could be something that would make more people come to the events. I think that was pretty much all I had to add. One thing about arts education, I did like how there was a focus not just on technical skills, but like reading, musicality. So I think that'll build stronger singers and chorus. So I did like that part. In terms of organizational excellence, one other thing, I was looking at it looked like the part-time staff or the administrative staff wasn't able to work many hours. So I was just wondering if maybe they could recruit volunteers to help out in that area until they're able to pay the administrative staff to work more hours.
Thank you. Now we will open the discussion to the panel for any additional or new comments.
It's Christine again. I just had a couple of other points. I wanted to say that I really enjoyed the YouTube link that was included in the application. I thought it spoke well to the high quality of music performed by the group, as well as represented the community it serves. So I thought that was that actually added to the application very well. I definitely echo the other panelists around the idea topics and workshops. I think that speaks well to the organization as a long-term strategy for board recruitment. So I appreciated their thoughtfulness around that. Let's see. Another thing I liked about this organization in regards to idea is that they mentioned trying to get childcare for their concerts. And I thought that was an excellent idea because a lot of times that is something that is a barrier for people to attend fine arts performances, is just getting child care or being able to care for child care or pay for child care. So I thought that that was an excellent way to address that barrier. So I appreciated that very much. Thank you.
And this is Asia. I agree with all the other panelists. I just had one comment to make. In their application, they spoke to ways that they were trying to diversify their board. And I just made the suggestion that maybe they look to some organizations that already represent young, diverse board leaders, like the Indianapolis Urban League. I know they spoke in their application that they went to some of these board meetings. And so I think it would just kind of expand their horizon to look to some of these organizations that are developing young, qualified, diverse leaders to possibly include them in their board, or I'm sorry, I'm lost for words, but just potentially being a board member.
Okay, seeing that our discussion is finished, I'll ask the panelists to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Okay, now we will review application number 5 from Pattern Inc., Arts Organization Support Level 1, starting with first reader, Joy.
All right, in the area of organizational excellence, I thought that the quality of the materials, like the magazine and the website, were pretty high, considering that it's a pretty small organization. I appreciate the efforts of the group to highlight the artistic and fashionable parts of the indie community. And I also appreciate their efforts to recruit more minorities to the board. And I think that will definitely increase awareness and support of Pattern. In terms of community engagement and idea, I would like to see more inclusion of all ages and different locations in Indy included. So maybe, you know, they could do a show or an event outside of downtown Indy on a different side of town. Arts education, I thought that their internships, fellowships, and their creative services program, I thought it seemed pretty strong. And they provide opportunities to coach and help the students in establishing their careers. I do think that they could offer a little bit more arts education programming, maybe hold workshops or classes at places like the Indianapolis Art Center in Broad Ripple or Newfields. I think that would, you know, especially like for people that are kind of interested in fashion but may not want a full-time career, I think that would be great to offer. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Joy. And now our second reader, Asia.
I think Joy, I concur with much of what Joy said. As far as organizational excellence, they said that they showed us that their interns and fellows and volunteers handle a lot of the operations. I just like to have seen that break down just a little bit in a general sense. You know, what are the interns responsible for? What are the fellows responsible for, to make sure that sustainability is continued? I think that would strengthen that particular aspect. And I do agree that they do a good job of their fellowship program. I think I agree with Joy on that particular piece. And I think that's the only extra comment that I have regarding this.
Thank you. Now we will open the discussion to the panel for any additional or new comments.
This is Christine. I had a couple of more comments. On the budget, I wanted to say that there was an expectation of a significantly higher budget, but it was explained in the notes, so I appreciated that. In regards to the marketing materials, I echo the other two panelists that they were very, very strong and added a lot to the application. In regards to the fellowship program, I appreciated that the program offers flexibility for those in the fellowship program. I would have liked to know how they choose the fellows and how they're encouraging diversity among the fellows and interns. It doesn't exactly say how or who they're marketed to. So are they going out to schools to ask people to apply, or certain programs at different colleges, or exactly how are they getting these fellows and interns? And then one of the goals stated for the program is to retain talent of this nature in the state, but I didn't see anything about has that happened with any of the people in their program. So knowing the percentage of people that, again, are in this industry, have stayed in this industry, or making a professional career out of it, the percentage of people that have gone through their program and have stayed in Indy would be great to know. I really enjoyed this application. I thought it was very well written. It provided a lot of information. So I definitely appreciated the time that was spent on this application.
Thank you.
This is Kavitha. I only had one other comment to add. You know, I thought it was great that they were supporting women-owned businesses and African-American owned businesses and creatives. I just wanted to know if there were any efforts to reach other multicultural groups in Central Indiana, whether as participants, you know, in their, you know, working with Pattern, or as attendees. So I just kind of wanted to see if what they were doing to broaden kind of their horizon, and then also if there were any efforts to include underserved audiences, youth, or, you know, persons with disabilities. I think a little bit more could have been said about that.
Okay, seeing that the discussion is finished, I'll ask panelists to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Okay, now we will review application number 6, Storefront Theater of Indianapolis, Inc., Arts Organization Support Level 1, starting with Alondra.
So I thought that this application did a good job of pointing out how it started from noticing, you know, the lack of female and minority playwrights, and definitely did their research. And this is shown in the application. I also noticed in terms of finances, I thought it was a very good move on their part to rent out their space during off hours. So congratulations to them on the significant budget increase. And the board as well, it appears to have a variety of people from the neighborhood itself, from different professional backgrounds. So I would imagine that that's a better reflection of the community. I would have maybe liked to have seen a clip from one of the plays, but I did like the images that they included. It's great that the organization also uses the community meetings to facilitate these conversations with intended audiences. They have some good designs for their promotional materials. But one thing I would like to see is how is the organization working to make its programming or even participation with its plays more accessible to those with disabilities. I thought that in terms of arts education, they did a good job in covering the various ways they tried to reach out to the local community, but I would have liked to see more clear objectives for each of the programs described, so just some more details on that. But yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Alondra. Now I'll invite our second reader, Christine, to add new or opposing comments.
I definitely agreed with what Alondra had to say. I really like the evolution that I saw in the budget from one year to the next. Some items we saw that had an actual cost that weren't budgeted in the previous year. I saw those added in the budgeted cost for the next year. So it was good to see that they realized that, oh, we didn't budget for that. This happened. We're going to adjust for that in the next year. So that shows that learning happened and the organization adjusted to that. I couldn't speak to the racial diversity on the board, but the gender mix seemed good. And there are different strengths on the board to help develop the organization. It might be good to look for marketing and event planning experience with for future board members. That might be very helpful to the organization. I liked also that input was gathered through the community meetings, which Alondra mentioned on that. It would be nice to know how the organization's marketing can be tailored a little bit more to get them out to more people, a more diverse audience, to get more low-income constituents and other diverse constituents to their plays. It didn't really mention if they had any free plays or if they offered any discounts on tickets to students or seniors to get more of those populations to their productions. It would also be good if they gathered feedback from their actors, playwrights, and all the others involved in the productions, as these are important constituents, and those, it sounds like those are from a diverse group as well. Well, I liked the marketing material on the website. To me, they don't specifically speak to the mission of the organization, so I think maybe tailoring that a little bit more would help speak to somebody that's visiting their website for the first time and really understanding what their mission is. I think Maria Souza has excellent qualifications to be working on the educational programs. Again, how are these educational programs marketed to reach underserved audience and or person with disabilities? And how will the students benefiting from the 46220 program be chosen? We didn't get a lot of information in that area, so I would have liked to have more about that. Also, I wanted to know what the long-term goal of the programs is. I mean, obviously it's to have minority playwrights and things of that nature, but is it to foster playwrights and actors to go into theater? Is it to keep talent here in Indianapolis? Is it to bring forth new works that challenge current thinking? I think identifying those kind of longer term goals and how you attract them would be very helpful to the organization. So thank you, those are my notes.
Thank you. Now we will open discussion to the panel for any additional or new comments. Seeing that the discussion is finished, I'll ask all panelists to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Now we will review application number 7, Summit Performance Indianapolis, Inc., Arts Organization Support Level 1. Starting with first reader, Christine.
I really like the information that this organization put into researching the industry and board members prior to actually starting the organization. I thought that was a really interesting way to go about it and not something I've heard before. It makes complete sense, but the way that they documented that and spoke about that, I really appreciated it. The financials were very easy and clear. There was an increase, but there was no explanation for that increase. So on the application, the space to explain those type of items is provided. So I would suggest not missing that opportunity to explain that to the panelists. If you're given an opportunity, definitely take it, because we're looking at those numbers, and if they're quite a bit higher than the previous year, a little bit of explanation would definitely be appreciated. The board meets every other month. They have 100% giving and a good mix of expertise and tenure, considering it's a fairly new organization. Racial diversification was addressed in the application and noted as a goal, so I appreciated that as well. They're very aware of that issue. The application was pretty clear on the population it served and how they plan to serve it. It's a lot of good statistics in the application. And they did show clear two-way interaction through community conversations and online surveys. Again, it would be good to engage those that the organization employs because that's often also a diverse population. So I'd like to see that. I did see that the application addressed inclusion, diversity, and education by engaging women of diverse backgrounds, and especially by presenting the issues facing the surrounding communities. But what about accessibility? I didn't see that addressed very well. Are the venues being vetted for accessibility and mobility issues? Are there discounted or free tickets to help low-income patrons or the elderly? I didn't see a mention of the 1X. Those are free and open to the public. But again, how is the organization marketing to those groups to put the word out to draw on those diverse populations? I didn't really see mention of how the organization will measure success and impact. One goal was to use theater to open vital community conversations. But how are they measuring this? Is it by their invitation to remount particular performances at other venues? I know that was mentioned several times. I liked that they said that they're going to be starting to track demographic data because this will give them a better picture of the impact of their work. I think it could a little bit more clearly articulate who is benefited. We understand that it's women, but be specific about how they're being benefited. Be more specific about the planned outcomes of the programming. I thought that was a very thoughtful application, good amount of preparation. I appreciated the statistics that supported the data in the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Now I'll invite our second reader, Asia, to add new or opposing comments.
I agree with much what Christine brought to the table. Just from a logistics perspective with the data and metrics they provided, the table that they put in, it seemed very good, but it did not fit the formatting. So I would just make just break down your data into paragraph form or wording form, just so it's not as hard to try to dissect, the different variances and impact that they have on diversity and inclusion. But I do appreciate them making sure that they let us know that those were impacts that they were making. The only other thing that I would like to say is concerning the arts education, I think their programming is definitely strong in identifying the voice of women in arts and in theater. However, I was hoping that they would highlight how their arts education is actually teaching people concerning the art of theater. It's not clear if the educational components are providing information to the audience about the arts or just the issues that the arts are highlighting. And I thought it would be strengthened to either include or to expand more of an arts component, maybe workshops with young up and rising or young women in theater. I think that would have strengthened their goals and their mission. And I think other than that, this was a pretty strong piece. I appreciate the work that they're doing.
Thank you, Asia. Now we'll open the discussion to the rest of the panel for any additional or new comments. Seeing that the discussion is finished, I'll ask panelists to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Now that we've completed the reviews for the Arts Organization Support Level 1, I think our plan was to take a 5-minute break. So I see our time at 10:50, and if you all would, I'm going to take a restroom break, be back in 5 minutes at 10:55, and I'll make sure everyone's here before we get going again. Thank you. With grant number 8, the City of Franklin Arts Project Support. Start with our first reader, Joy.
All right. Overall, I thought that the District Banners program was a creative and cost-effective way to promote the city and the arts. I appreciated that it engages residents. It doesn't look like there's any kind of barrier to participate. and local artists. Lots of community participation. I like that it was inclusive, that they would offer like different graphics for those who don't, English is not their primary language, and it acknowledges sight limitations for some people. And I thought that those who were placed in charge of the project appeared qualified to lead. So overall, I thought it was pretty good.
Great, thank you, Joy. Our second reader, Alondra, I'll ask you to add any new or opposing comments.
So yeah, I agreed with what Joy had to say. It is an interesting collaborative project. I would have liked to see a little bit more information on how the community has been brought in to, create the initial idea. How, if there's any like previous examples of other places that have done something similar, and how they are aware that it can create meaningful, impactful experiences through effective placemaking. I would also like to say, I was a little confused by a little of the details that were included concerning the design committee. How would that committee be chosen? Would they be ensuring that the committee included people that were an accurate representation of the city? And how would these idea strategies be utilized in this portion of the process for the project? The evaluation plan could have also been a little bit more clear. They say that they would use social media. Would that would mean surveys would be administered? Again, just a bit more details about how they would go about it. They do a good job of explaining the end goal of bringing the community together through this project. Just again, more details in that portion would have been more helpful.
Thank you. Now we will open the discussion to the panel for any additional or new comments.
Hi, Kavitha here. My one note was, since this is a public art project, I would like to see, in their budget that they take into account any maintenance or replacement of banners should they get damaged or vandalized. There wasn't necessarily a plan for that. And I was wondering on the shelf life of the banners, do they plan to change those out pretty frequently? How do they plan to sustain those and sort of maintain those? And then who's responsible for any damages or vandalism that may incur?
Okay, thank you. Seeing that the discussion is finished, I'll ask all panelists to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Now we will review application number 9, Creative Council of Franklin, Arts Project Support, starting with our first reader, Asia.
So I thought this application was pretty strong. I definitely appreciated the artistic example they provided. It was a good visual for the project and what they were getting, what they're accomplishing. I think what could strengthen this section as far as is that when they talked about how they needed to get input, I wanted to see a little bit more about how they glean their input. Did they use surveys? Did they use direct conversations? Understanding a little bit more detail as to how they received the input from the community would have been good. It would be nice to know what the youngest participant in this particular project was and the oldest participants and what that looked like prior years. I just would like to see the growth. They talked about how they had young and old, and just to kind of see the growth over the years to see how it was creating sustainability would have been good. As far as the community engagement for this project. It shows that I said it shows initiative and follow through on addressing the gaps from the previous year. So I was very appreciative of the fact that they looked at the gaps that they had and began to actually address them and find out ways of how they could better expand the program and reach certain demographics that were not available or inclusive the year before. And they were clear on their tools and information on how they projected the number of participants. I did appreciate that, how they said that, you know, they believe the number of participants were going to increase, and the projections that they made was very clear. The project management, it seems that the project management is pretty solid. I will also like to see some further detailed qualifications beyond board members. For example, the board members that are over fundraising and financing, I would just kind of like to see some previous experience just to show that the effectiveness, and it could have been that this was the same person that was over fundraising the year before. However, that was not clearly stated in the application, and I think that would have strengthened it a little bit more. And then I think that was the last comment that I made. Overall, I felt that this was a pretty good project, and confident in their ability to manage it.
Thank you, Asia. I'll invite our second reader, Joy, to add new or opposing comments.
I don't have much to add. I pretty much agree with Asia. It does seem like a strong project. I think it was really great that the council acknowledged that they could be stronger in areas of diversity and inclusion. And then looks like they're developing strategies to tackle that goal. So I think that's really great. In terms of the budget, I would have liked to have seen the income and expense statement. I only saw the balance sheet uploaded, so I saw that they were in the red last year. So I just would have liked to have been able to see and kind of understand more about what was going on. But overall, I agree with Asia.
Thank you, Joy. Now we'll open the discussion to the panel for any additional or new comments.
I had a couple of comments. I saw one picture of a young girl holding up a drawing as an example of some of the art that was produced during this event last year. And while I appreciate it, it sounds like a very cool event, and I appreciate that it's open to everyone. That doesn't make me think that the art is necessarily of the highest quality, and I'm sure they did have some high quality artists, and maybe presenting some pictures of those artists' productions would be great, or perhaps inviting some professional artists to be featured, and how their art starts at the beginning of the day and goes to the end of the day would be something that would provide more high quality art if they're feeling like it's a little not as high quality as it could be. So that's just a thought. The other item I wanted to mention was, it sounded like a lot of the information is gathered informally through conversations and a little bit through registration forms, but it would be helpful to find a more formal way to collect data and track demographics and artists and patrons of the events, because this will tell you where you need to do more outreach to, and especially if this continues year over year, that information will be really, really helpful for you. And then finally, what's the measurement of success here? Is it that it continues to grow year over year, or are there other measures of success that the council wants to have, such as more diversity of people attending the event, or what are the measurements of success? So just more information about how they're measuring success for this particular project would be great. Thank you.
Okay, seeing that the discussion is finished, I'll ask panelists to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Now we will review application number 10, Johnson County Public Library Foundation Arts Project Support, starting with first reader, Kavita.
Sorry, I'm having slow internet technical difficulties, so hang on.
Uh-huh.
That's
We
just
can wait.
a minute. It's loading. I apologize. So I thought this was definitely a pretty strong application. I did note that, that they're, that they are adding this arts and performance component to an already existing festival, and that they are choosing to work with an Indian cultural group and Bollywood dance group. And I just wanted to make sure that they were being completely authentic in who they're using as a henna artist, and what sort of crafts that they're planning to do. There was a mention of crafts in addition to the performance and the henna, and I just wanted to know more about what those crafts are that they're planning to fund and how they link back to the Indian culture, who's implementing those, and furthermore, will the crafts be free? Will the henna be free? That kind of speaks in terms of accessibility to some of this programming. I think they could have elaborated a little bit more on that. I thought it was great that they plan to have interpreters to translate, but I think they could have elaborated a little bit more on what their strategies are to implement the IDEA initiatives. It does also seem like they plan to talk with the festival partners on being involved on a larger scale to sponsor these activities and the performance. But it wasn't clear to me whether or not they have already had this conversation with the organizers of the festival yet. And if they have their full support, I'm assuming that they do, but I wasn't sure exactly how involved the festival partners have been with this planning process as well. In terms of evaluation data, I wanted to know a little bit more about if they plan to share evaluation data across with the festival organizers and partners as well, to get feedback, to get more thorough feedback, and to if this was something they plan to do each year as part of the festival, because that might inform what sort of feedback they're getting and what sort of what participants may want to see in future years. In terms of project management, according to this timeline, again, it was just that it says that they've met with the festival organizers, but it was kind of unclear in the community engagement and ideas section how the festival organizers were involved. I think the timeline could also elaborate a little bit more on their collaboration with the Indian community and how they've been involved in the planning process, and to make sure their voices are heard and that this experience is as authentic as possible, and that they are also included in the evaluation process once the project has been implemented. I think that is all of my comments.
Thank you, Kavita. I'll invite the second reader, Alondra, to add new or opposing comments.
So yes, I definitely agree with everything Kavita had to say. I think I did read in there though that they have some individuals that work within the library that are Indian, and I believe that is how they were getting their information and collaborating. But again, that could have been made clearer if they are going to be involved in the process of planning for this project. But it is great to hear about how the organization wants to, raise cultural awareness to the community and low-income families. But I think it could have included a little bit more about what the Ethos Festival is for panelists not from the area, just to include it in there and how it ties in exactly to what they're wanting to do besides bringing in more visitors. I would have liked to see what the organization would be doing in terms of accessibility accommodations for the event, especially if they expect so many attendees to attend. They didn't really speak on where this would be held and if the space is able to handle those accommodations. I would also recommend including a more detailed plan on how they intend on evaluating and measuring the program success, rather than depending on social media comments and just open conversations had. Maybe try to get some more formal feedback through surveys with attendees as they're leaving the event, or even posting surveys onto social media sites to learn how you can improve programming, what went well, what didn't, especially if you're trying to get feedback from members of the community you are trying to inform the local community about. But yeah, I also included a little bit more clarity about the financial expenses. There was like a hands-on art or yoga expense. I wasn't sure if that meant both are going to be done, or, and then again, more clarity about what the activities are, as Kavita had said. So yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Now we will open discussion to the panel for any additional or new comments.
I had a couple of comments to add to our great panelists that they've said so far. I thought it would have been good to get some statistics about the makeup of Johnson County and why they particularly chose Indian to highlight. It would have just been great to know if that is an area that is small in the community, or why they particularly chose that, and in that same light, are they going to highlight a different ethnicity every year that's present in Johnson County, or would they like to? I like that they included the link to the troupe so we could see the artistic quality of the group, and I also like that they had seen this group perform before, so again, they knew what they were getting into with the group prior to booking the group. Let's see. Again, it's not explicitly stated, but I'm assuming the activities are free because they state it's open to all. But again, that's an assumption, and I would feel better if they said, what's going to be free? Are all the activities free? Is the performance free? Is the henna artist free? Et cetera, et cetera. So just being very clear on exactly what is free, and if everything's free, saying that. Again, I like that they're going to be doing social media. I would encourage that they need to actually specifically ask for feedback, not just assume that people will like the posts about the event. So making sure that they actually actively go out and ask for feedback about the program, and then also making sure that they're not only collecting feedback via social media, because not everybody is on social media or has access to that, so we can't leave those other people out of getting feedback. So just making sure that they are having those community conversations, and again, tracking that feedback as well. I think they also formally need to track attendees. They mentioned people coming by the tables last year, but more formally tracking the attendees in some way, whether it's just a sheet that they're marking down or something like that. And then I would have liked to seen a little bit more documentation about why they think that they're going to have 200% more participation than they did last year. That's very, very aggressive, and maybe it's very feasible, I'm not sure, but maybe they're thinking because they have this dance troupe and the henna artists and these other activities, they're going to get double the participation. So I just think more information about why they think it's going to be 200% more would be good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing that the discussion is finished, I'll ask all panelists to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Now we will review application number 11, Sycamore Rehabilitation Services, Arts Project Support, starting with first reader, Asia.
I'm pulling it up, guys. Hold on.
That's fine.
So for this particular project, I thought that this programming was really strong. I appreciated that in their organizational excellence, how they included feedback, two-way feedback between the participants, and allowing that to inform how they move forward with this particular program. I would have liked to see, and maybe just a short testimonial of the impacts of the program, just kind of getting a little more information on how impactful this program has been on past participants, and how that has influenced their decisions for the current project moving forward. Their community education and community engagement idea, I think they did a really good job at identifying that they partnered with an organization that does so much work with community engagement and inclusion, diversity, equity, especially with youth and youth programming. So acknowledging, the areas that they're able to bring to the table and partnering with an organization that's able to provide that was really strong. It's definitely clear that this program is meant to serve an underserved population. And like I said, I appreciate how they have partnered with I think it's the CMP group, to make sure that they're able to achieve their objectives. And then as far as the financial budget was a little off. The income and expenses were off. So just being a little more clear about how the expenses that they're going to be acquiring during this project, and making sure that the income is equal to that or greater than that. I think that's something that was a little bit of concern. Their expenses supersede the income that they have planned. Other than that, I thought that this was a strong project that has, in their definition, shown growth, and I would appreciate seeing some more.
Thank you, Asia. I'll invite our second reader, Christine, to add new or opposing comments.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate it and agree with Asia's comments. One thing I would have liked to see on the application was, it did mention that feedback from last year's program was collected from participants on what they wanted to accomplish for the program. It didn't state what those results said or what people thought. So it would be interesting to know that information, as well as what changes in the program did they make or are they making for this year based on that feedback that they received. It also doesn't speak much about how the applicant or how the participants will be chosen. So I think that would be great to include as well. And then I enjoyed the video. I did think that since it's a showcase, we could have seen more photos from other portions of the showcase rather than just the short video. Let's see. I definitely thought their idea strategies were on point. They're obviously very in tune to those. I really would have liked to see a more specific schedule about the program timeline. Even if it's just an outline of a past time that was used, the general of May, whatever it was, May to whatever, just seemed very vague. Participation figures were flat from year to year, so I don't know if that's because they don't anticipate having any more participants or because of the ratios needed for helpers for that population have to be at a certain percentage. So they might know because they have this many people to help, they can only have X number of participants. So, but again, knowing that would have been great. Let's see. I thought the budget seemed reasonable. I also noted it was a little bit off, just as Asia did. Again, a more specific timeline. And I don't think we needed to see the management letter from their financial audit. I thought that was a little bit much, although I appreciated the detail. And then just for the applicant to make sure that all of their links and everything work. So you might want to include them in like a PDF document, because one of the links for me did not work anyway. That's all I had.
Thank you. Now we'll open discussion to the panel for any additional or new comments. Okay, seeing that the discussion is finished, I'll ask all panelists to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Now we will review application number 12, the District Theater Arts Project Support, starting with our first reader, Alondra.
So I thought this application gave a very thorough description of the musical and why they believe it's important to bring to Indianapolis. It sounds interesting and as though it's just been successful in other major cities, but I would have liked to see a little bit more information on why they believe specifically the Indianapolis community would want to or would like to see this project here rather than basing it on outside comedy theater show market research. In terms of community engagement, I was not quite seeing enough detail on how they intended to directly involve the local community, particularly underserved communities beyond potential unemployment opportunities because of the emphasis on, community collaboration. And I also didn't really notice any examples on how they intended to address potential barriers to accessibility. So I would have liked to see a little bit more on how they intended to implement idea strategies. In terms of project management, though, I thought overall it seemed very well organized and clear. The timeline seems reasonable, and the project leads appear to be very well qualified. So that was all I had.
Thank you. I'll invite our second reader, Kavita, to add any new or opposing comments.
So I know that one of the audiences that they said they were trying to attract were younger crowds, specifically those who frequent Mass Ave and could potentially drop in. I wasn't sure exactly what their strategy was in attracting this age group. I know that the content of the play definitely might attract that sort of younger age group, but are they working with neighborhood businesses, the neighborhood association, kind of what are those goals and how effective would that be for a drop-in versus, purchasing tickets in advance for a theater performance. They also mentioned that there were a lot of different organizations mentioned as collaborators of this project, but it wasn't clear exactly how they would all be involved. I think that could have been a little clearer. I agree with Alejandra on the idea strategies initiatives, what they're doing to attract more diverse audiences. Will they provide low income or area residents to receive discounted tickets? Is the facility accessible? Will there be an ASL interpreter? Just some things to consider. It did also mention that the project serves all types of audiences, but specifically including citizens with a love of theater. But then they also later mentioned that this project is supposed to attract non-theater going crowds. So that was kind of a little confusing as to who their target audience is. Maybe it's both. And then the only other thing I noted in the financials was that I think the cash expenses for the 10 actors was missing a 0, but the rest of the budget made sense. Those are my additions.
Thank you, Kavita. Now we will open discussion to the panel for any additional or new comments.
I had a couple of comments to add. I wondered if we could have had a better YouTube clip. I didn't think it did much to promote the show. The application specifically speaks to parodies of Star Wars, but besides seeing the stormtroopers and tutus and some other recognizable characters, that's about all I got from it. So seeing some of those scathing social criticisms or just a small clip like that would have spoken better to the show. And then speaking of the scathing social criticisms, kind of what in that is important. So is it about racism? Is it gender equality? What are those issues that are being brought forward through the production? I do think the production will be authentic in high quality, and I think that it'll definitely have a great impact and be meaningful to those that are involved in the project. In regards to IDEA, I agree with the other panelists. I was struggling with how they were intentionally addressing the IDEA strategies. They're stating that tickets are affordable, but how are they determining that threshold? And again, mobility issues weren't addressed either. Let's see. It looks like the project managers and directors had appropriate experience. And I thought the financials were a little bit confusing. A lot of them were for Indie Fringe Festival. So again, that tied to what relationship that has to the district theater in this project was very unclear to me. I think it's an interesting project, something that will be interesting to see if the Indianapolis community is accepting of this kind of project. I think it's interesting how they're bringing this up from Atlanta, and that they think it will do well here in Indy. And I agree with the one panelist who mentioned why did they think this would be a good show for the Indy population. Thank you.
Okay, seeing that the discussion is finished, I'll ask all panelists to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Thank you to our panel. This concludes the fiscal year 2021 Region 7 Regional Initiative Grant Panel number 3. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you.